got everybody here. I did have a quick look before. I think we've got everybody here. Yes, we are being live streamed, and it will be, the audio recording will be available on the council website later as well. So it will be there for you. Any apologies? Anybody got to leave early? Conflicts of interest? Right, the last minutes. Anyone got any questions around those? Right, I'll move that they are accepted. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Andrea. Any discussion? Right, all those in favour, raise your hand, or mark, do whatever you can do. Those against? That's carried. Right, we've actually got 3 deputations tonight, and so that's the next item on the agenda. We'll start with Doug Wethy from Woodend Beach. I'd also just like to say that the information that was sent out to board members, when was it sent out to you? When it was sent out anyhow, it actually relates to the long-term submission the residents put in last year to the council to ask for the funding to be brought forward for the playground and toilet renewal. That was approved. So if you're reading it and thinking, well, that sounds a bit strange, the funding is actually there for the next financial year for this. So don't worry about that. I will hand you over to Doug. Doug, you've got about 10 minutes to tell us what you think.
Well, I'll get Anna to say something as well, if that's all right. The big thing is that the beach playground needs upgrading with some new stuff, and that's reflected too with the toilet area, which is inadequate. When mothers and children use the playground, they need ready access to the toilet facilities as well, and at the present time they're a long way away. So I've sent you pictures. Some of you may have received the photographs of the toilet facilities that we have at the moment. They're pretty substandard and need upgrading. One of the things that came up in talking to Greg Burns, who's the Chief Ranger at the Tuatara Trust, was that he would like to see the toilet situated near the headquarters on the hill, which would make it closer to the playground, and also people that are visiting the Rangers headquarters, and there are quite a lot of groups now doing that, they would be able to use the toilet facilities there as well. We looked at the playground, and they have an old disused toilet on the hill that's been disused and vandalised over the years. That would make a really good base for a flying fox. So we would think that having a flying fox there would be a nice addition. Also, there's a jungle gym type thing that they've got in Oxford. What's it called, Anna?
A spider frame. A
spider frame we thought would be great there. And all of these things can be done around the existing playground. I think that there was a suggestion that the whole thing needs to be done away with and restarted, but that would take a lot of money, and it's absolutely not necessary. We just need some additions. We don't need a whole new Taj Mahal. We just need something that's adequate. One of the things that the beach people would quite like to see, and Anna might say something on this, would be half a basketball court like they have in Kaiapoi, the young people. You could say something about that, Anna.
Yeah, hi, my name's Anna Scott. Thank you for having us here tonight. We really appreciate just you hearing our thoughts and hopefully helping us out, because we would love some help. So currently there's 50 plus kids in primary age at Woodend Beach, and that is growing. So we've just got a new development up the road, Copper Beach, and possibly there are another ones happening at Woodend Beach as well. I've been here for 20 plus years, and over that time there really hasn't been a lot of no development down with the toilets or the playground at all. And with this amount of children down here, especially at the age they get into, a majority of them are boys, and a majority at last sort of few years at primary. So I, as a mother, kind of want to get them out of the house, get them not on the streets, but we've got a beautiful, environment for the kids to grow up in, but we just need to also have somewhere for them to sort of congregate and be safe. Basketball is a sport that's really up and coming, and a lot of kids have basketball hoops at their properties. So we would love the idea possibly of a half basketball court down at the beach. Doug saying about the playground, is how it exists is good. It's really good for younger kids, but yeah, it'd be amazing to be able to push it out a bit, get a bit more equipment there that sort of accommodates that older age group as well. And we do have a lot of people come down and use the beach, and the toilets at the current state they're not too good. It does have an outdoor shower, which is great, which we'd love to keep. It's not really inviting for people. A lot of people come down and know that there's a reserve there that they can use for big family picnics, and so it would be nice just to have somewhere that they know.
You're just fading in and out a bit there, Anna.
Oh, sorry.
There you are.
Yeah. Okay. With the toilets, just love to have an upgrade just to make it a really, a pleasant environment for people to be able to go to the toilet. Really. I really appreciate you listening to us and thoughts about it. We just have a lot of kids out here really feel that it'd be awesome to have a better environment, playground for them to be able to be in, and something that's a bit more age appropriate.
You're fading out, Anna.
That's about it, really.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people been here for such a long time as well. I walk the streets, and we have a Facebook page, and just put it out there to what people I submitted a lot of ideas, and I also gathered a lot of signatures from people. Just would they like to see an upgrade? And we're really appreciative that the upgrades are on the long-term plan, but we just would love to see it possibly coming a little bit sooner than they've speculated as well.
Fading out, Anna.
Anything else, Doug?
No, I don't think so. It's just that the council will probably have some plans that they think might be appropriate for us. We just want to be consulted and in the mix, so that the council don't come out with something which is really not appropriate. The residents down here know what we think we'd like, and we just want to say and speak to the right people, so that we don't have something imposed on us that we don't really need.
I understand you have been talking to Tori.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Who is the Green Space Officer in charge of the project.
Yeah.
So those channels of communication will be important going forward.
Yes. Yeah. I think she's doing a presentation to you tonight in a workshop.
Yeah, later this evening, and you'll be able to listen into that later or listen to it tomorrow if you want to.
Right, thank you. That would be great.
So I'll open that up to questions. So yes, we are having a workshop with Tori later on, and not so much as to what's actually going to be in the playground, but just some generalities before we do go out before she goes away to prepare a plan. And then actually, we do consult with the community. So there is all that process still to happen. So anybody got any questions for John and Anna? Andrea?
Thank you very much for your presentation. So what I've taken from that is a spider frame, a flying fox, and your perfect magic wand, a half basketball court, and obviously the toilets to be refurbed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, and perhaps some smaller, just the odd smaller equipment for smaller children. I had a picture of something on a spring, But that was just an addition, which is not that important.
Okay. Funny enough, we've already been down this road with some of these items with other areas. Toilets is the big dollar factor. They are extremely expensive for council, and certainly not within our budget on community board level. Flying Fox, love them, and I've been an advocate for them for another area as well. If we were to prioritise those 4 there, what would be the main thing for you as a community? If you couldn't have all 4, what would be the priority?
That's a tricky question.
You're the mum with the kids.
Yeah, I'm the mum with the teenage boys, and I'd say basketball court 100%. But then there's also the mums that sort of see, we do currently have a slightly dodgy, it's not high on safety down there, and we've got a wooden slide that probably needs a bit of a railing put on it, but yeah, probably the spider or the flying fox. Yeah, I've just said 2, 3 there, all 3. Can we have all 3? Yeah.
Of course we can. Of course we can.
No, yeah, that is a tricky question. For the age groups that's coming through, majority of them are the late primary, early high school. So the basketball court kind of has, especially if it was concrete, it would be used for scooters. It would probably be used for tennis if it had a wall on it. It could have a multitude of uses if it was planned to have a multitude of uses, which would be really cool. But yeah, I'm not sure. But whereas Doug has some younger grandkids down here, so he'd probably be saying a spider frame. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but good question. That's not really a clear answer. Sorry, Andrea.
That's good. Any other questions from anyone?
I just a retort to that is I can't speak to a spider frame or I can't speak to a half basketball court, but definitely a flying fox has been a part of as far as costings for another area. And it does make me smile that the toilets were a priority.
No, they are a priority. Sorry, I thought you meant just for the playground.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt here? The toilets are actually funded under the LTP, as is the playground renewal. So it's a playground refresh. So that is not an issue. So the toilets, are there.
Thank God. Okay. Yeah. So I guess from my point of perspective, I love that you've actually made the effort to come to us for this. I have no costings or number-wise as far as spider frame or a half basketball court. Only thing I would ask for staff would be to come back to us with costings so we can actually evaluate to see what we were looking at as far as an investment to the area. But I totally agree with you that anything that can benefit our children and families because of the cognitive, getting them out of their homes and off the iPads and all of the devices, totally get that, being a mother as well. But we would need to seek some consult from the staff at council as far as costings for that spider frame and also for a half basketball court. And then if permission, we can come back to you, then we can come back to you and then discuss this further. But we need the facts before we could make any support of any one thing from my perspective as a board member. So, but I thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So that will be part of the workshop. Tori will go through the process that we'll follow. And yes, we do always get the costings and everything. So that won't be an issue. So thank you very much, Doug and Anna. Thank you very much for all the work that you have done. And your LTP submission last year was great and you got the result. So congratulations.
And we thank the board too for their interest. Thank you.
So you can disappear if you like, because it will be later in the meeting when we do have our workshop with Tori. You can listen to it live later on, or tomorrow. It'll be
Okay.
online.
Thank you very much, Shona. Thank you, board members.
Good
Thank you
evening.
very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've got a presentation now. We'll go with Max Warren, who wants to talk to us about the Waikuku Beach Hedge shelter belt. Max, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone. Yeah, you've obviously read the report, hopefully. I guess my 2 cents is, reading the report, I think the right decision has been made to plan to remove it. However, I think the timeframes that I mentioned are a bit extreme, given that the amount that the hedge grows every year. Well, I've been on this site not long, admittedly, only not 2.5 years now, but I've been in Waikuku basically all my life. It, especially down mine, which is the southern end of Park Terrace, it's getting out of control in terms of being able to trim it every year. I don't think, and which is why I guess it hasn't been trimmed, I don't think there's a machine big enough to actually trim the top and sides of it successfully, like can be done, I guess, further towards the north. So my concern with the report was that it would be done in 2025 or 2024, which is another 2.5 years. And each year it's growing a meter every way, as it does. And that's my main concern, really. Also, I guess the tender cost of doing it, which seems quite high. I mean, I'm not an arborist, admittedly, but I think, yeah, if you leave it for another couple of years, it's obviously going to expand in size by, 1/3, and therefore the price is going to go up again. And I guess based on who I talked to in the community and everyone around here, the not vast majority, obviously, based on your report, which was, I think, 58% positive for removal. Yeah, the people I talk to that live in the area are keen to have it removed, just because, I mean, it's not great for school kids walking down to the bus. They're walking on one side of the road, like my kids, who's my kid, Olive, and I've got a 2-year-old who we walk down to the bus with another couple of girls from Pine Ave, and because it encroaches on the road, it is quite sort of, you've got to walk on one side. If you've got cyclists or skateboarders, you're all focused on one side of the road. And if it was removed and replaced with natives, which I think was in the plan, I think it would just be a far more sort of an environment more akin to the community with the wetlands there. It's not an invasive macrocarpa hedge, which my opinion is that macrocarpas sort of belong in the hinterland rather than a wetland at the beach. It should be natives. And I feel for Ruth down on the corners, an elderly lady, with it just growing, basically consuming her yard. And she's talked to me numerous times about getting removed, but obviously, yeah, we've got to all go through this process, and everyone has their thoughts and their say on it. And yeah, I'm having mine now. That's probably it from me. Yeah.
Thank you, Max, for submitting your feedback, because I know you did, which is great, and for taking the time, to present tonight, which is really good. And I know you asked me last year, when it was going to be, and if you could present. So it is good that we have got that. So has anybody got any questions for Max? I've got one, Max. How much shelter do you think it provides for the houses along there?
Not a lot, to be honest. I mean, I'm a bit of a weather nerd. I surf a lot, and I've got a weather forecasting little thing with the dial, and it tells me what way the wind direction is. We don't get a lot of westerlies here, which is evident. I mean, we get nor'westers and we get sou'westers, and nor'westers blow more north in my cuckoo and sou'westers blow more south. We don't actually get a wind that comes directly from the west, which this thing shelters us from. And most of the properties down here have a decent fence and trees anyway, and even in the long term, you know, trees will grow up in a couple of years anyway, just not to the height of this thing. Because what I see in this thing, I remember I lived in New Brighton for a while, and the macrocarpers that lie Marine Parade down by the North Beach Surf Club, which are just they've got away obviously, and they're so big, and I think this is what I sort of see this happening. I mean, I look out my window now, and it's at least 12 meters high on the corner of Ruth's place. Yeah, it obviously would provide shelter given its thickness and its size, but I think the benefits of removing it would far outweigh the shelter that we get, because I mean, most of the time it's an easterly, right?
True. Any other questions from anyone?
Has there actually been any costing about the removal?
It's in the report, John.
I read that, but I'm just wondering, you know, what impact does those costings have?
Well, I think it was at $20,000 to trim every year, when removal was 100,000 plus whatever else the planting. So, I mean, 5 years time, you're at zero.
Andrea?
I thought your report was really good.
Andrea?
Got it. The unfortunate thing is it's actually 85K above the current budget. So it's quite a significant amount of money. And Max, I totally agree with you as well. The challenge we have with when it goes that far above is it really needs to be recognised in the LTP, which is not what you want to hear. And I know what you're saying, because 2024 is a long time out, and that's when we're projecting that it could potentially happen for you. But I totally concur that you want to get it done urgently, more urgently than 2024. Only thing for me is I need to seek advice. We've got that from council that they agreed to that they could remove it, and that we would look at finding the funds to actually cover it. And that's where I feel comfortable with that at that point. 85K, unfortunately, is a significant amount of money.
Yeah, it is.
To find, unless we win lotto, but I don't think council can apply for a lotto ticket. But recognise what you're saying, and I feel sorry for what you're saying for the neighbour down the road as well. But I guess it's the restraint we have, and it is a significant amount of money above where they currently are budgeted at the moment. But I certainly would support, and we'll come to that, that we definitely review it, but it would need to have a review of where we can actually gain that money from.
Would it be worth considering removing like sections of it that have obviously down my end south side, it's twice as large as it is on the north, whether you could do it in segments, because I honestly think it's going to get, well, the longer you leave it, the larger it gets, and obviously the more money you spend. But I completely understand where you're coming from. I mean, it's an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, I'd like to tender for it, but I don't have a big enough chainsaw.
Thanks, Max. That's one question we can actually.
Me either.
Now, does anybody else have any other questions? Emphasis on questions. Right. Thank you very much, Max, for participating in this. If you want to stay online, we'll hear from Joe Kane next, who is also going to do as a deputation, and then we will have the item on the Waikuku Beach Hedge. So if you actually want to stay online, you'll be able to listen to it live.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Max.
Yes.
Welcome, Joe.
Can you hear me?
We can, thanks, Joe.
Right, so nothing went. Well, I'm across the road from Max, and I wrote down what's in a hedge. I can tell you what, this has been a very painful process. And I'm looking at Andrew, I'm going, Andrew, imagine from your place having something over 12 foot in front of your place and knowing beyond that is the Southern Alps and the estuary and what have you. So I've lived here over 30 years now, And I can tell you when I used to walk past that hedge, it was just up past my shoulder. So I dispute that it's got some history. And I'm very, very unhappy with the process, really unhappy. And I'll tell you why, because I kicked this off with the roading team. And we went a long way with the roading team, and they kicked it to the rec team. And then when it got held up with the rec team, because the roading wanted to go back to about a footpath, it was never about a footpath. It was about a hedge that has grown huge inside, that shades a road and therefore shades all of the houses on the inside, not just the ones directly opposite. I'm 1, 2, 3 back, and I lose the sun in the middle of winter at 3 a.m. Ruth doesn't get the sun for most of from lunchtime right through till about 4 when it drops over the other side. So this is about a health and well-being good thing as well. The hedge is dark. It is too tall. It has got rubbish underneath it. I've never seen a kid play in that hedge for years and years and years. And actually, if you tried to get through it, you'd find it's not very nice. I did remove the shopping trolley that was out it. So the process has really irritated me in this. And only 3 weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, when I rang to say, was this report finally going, after being mucked around with these reports, I was given an expectation to some questions I asked that this was already almost a done deal. That, and so much so that I talked about how quickly could we have the benefits of this, and I'm not that stupid. I can be silly, but I'm not that stupid, that I now feel really resentful that I've missed putting into the annual plan about this, because I was given an expectation that this was just a matter of the process of getting it through council. When I read the report to find 2024, so it'd be 5 years since this project was started, myself going to roading, including a community consultation expectation. Most of the people along here that said no have actually changed their mind once they actually saw how it was getting taller. And then we talked again about the shading effect on their properties, especially in the winter, because the consultation was done in the middle of the summer, and it's not quite such a problem because the sun sets way further along. So I'm not actually happy. The footpath we talked about, take it out. We can, once the hedge is removed, we can possibly collect some driftwood and put a beach trail type thing along there until the footpath comes in. As I said, the amenity is behind the hedge. There are wetlands, there are Southern Alps, there's rural things. This is an unsustainable hedge now. From the end that I look out, which I can see out through my window now, well, my tape measure I couldn't get it up that high. I measured the width. The width is only 8 meters down our end, and I agree with Max that perhaps you can do the end causing the most grief where everyone is in problem, having the problem with it, and especially when the winter. And I want you to think about what that means. When the winter comes, at 3 o'clock, the sun is gone from your property. It goes. It's because it is so hot. And even when they trimmed it last time, they trimmed it at 10 foot. And I think Max is right. I think that's as high as their reach is going. So I think we're in a big trouble. I am really unhappy that I, in good faith, have taken part in this process, and I read a report that talks about 2024, because that was never the expectation when we consulted on this, was never the expectation from anyone in the community. And I'm not just going to lie down. Sure, it's a lot of money, but let's try and find some ways that we can get this down. It seems a lot of money for a hedge. And then I could put to you, you're going into a consultation process shortly about more things that Waikuku Beach wants. Well, I'll put it to you that Waikuku Beach is spoiled for recreation amenity type stuff. We have a lot of stuff that we get free: the beach, the ocean, the trees, the forest, bike things. This is a maintenance issue, long-standing, unsustainable, and it really galls me to think that for the next 3 years you'll have to trim this hedge back off the road because it's now. And we actually asked it not to be trimmed last year so we could save the money, and now we get told to wait for 2024. So I had really high expectations, and I feel really let down when I saw that piece of the report. And I felt worse because I didn't bother putting in a submission. I would have put in a submission, and I would have done a little bit more work to go and gather the people that had originally said, oh no, we think we'll lose our privacy. We think we'd this, have all the 3 down the far end and the 2 down here have all changed their mind, going, actually, it's a pain in their butt. So I'm not happy about the process, to be honest. Glad that you've got the report. Glad that you can see the costs. The costs are the costs, but the cost to us where we live here is, I would rather see the amenity values that I think that everybody would enjoy along here, instead of being dark and actually very icy in summer. How do I know it's icy? Because I've slipped on it twice. I've walked along there. I slipped once really badly, and the kids have to walk. It's dark. It's not about a footpath. It's about a hedge that has got out of control and needs to be gone sooner rather than later. Why would you keep maintaining it? When if the decision, which I absolutely agree it goes down, I don't agree about the time frame. As an aside, I don't know whether there's any money left in the Waikiki Beach freeholding account, Simon Mark, and you might be able to find it. There was money in the freeholding account that could only be used at Waikiki Beach. When I left the council, there was still $110,000 in it. And so maybe someone could go and find if all that money's been used. But I'd be, if you're not keen on 85, let's try and look at 40 this year, 40 the next year, and get it down, get half and half. So thank you. I'm really glad it's here, but I'm really not happy about the time frame. I feel very let down, and I think when I go down and talk to people in the community, they're going to look at me like I've got 2 heads, because I skip along and go, yeah, it's really great. The staff are on board, and we can, if it goes through and through council, we can probably get it down this winter. Do it. 2024, maybe. So pretty disappointing, really.
Thank you, Jo. Yeah, I mean, you've put your views out very well, and which is good for us to actually hear. So I would open it up to questions, and I would remind people that it is actually questions, please. Anybody got any questions for Jo? It doesn't look like it, Jo. So I would say again, thank you very much for putting your views. It is appreciated, because we do need to hear from the community. So it is appreciated. We will move to that report next. So if you want to stay around, you will hear what we come out with. So
thanks everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. We don't have any adjourned business, so I will move to the first report, which is the future of the Shelterbout Hedge. So Grant, we've got Grant McLeod is going to take that one, I do believe. This is a green space night tonight, I've decided.
Yep, no, you're getting this Grant, not Grant Reburn. Jo's comments not lost on me. I think it's very fair in terms of what she was saying. You'll see from the report that actually what's kind of come out of that is that the community is relatively supportive of us taking the hedge down. Really, one of the key issues that we've got with this project is the timing. I'd agree with what Jo and Max are saying as well. There's every chance that Green Space can go back out and actually get this re-tendered or repriced. We could also work with the local community as well in terms of looking at the timing of this in terms of what it is that we actually do, and whether or not there's a more pressing section of the hedge that needs to be looked at before any other. What I would say is that in terms of replanting, we're probably going to lose this season. So any planting plan that we need to do, I'd really like us to actually do that with the community again. In terms of looking at what it is that we might actually do, just in terms of a simple cross section for that area, because it's relatively quite long. As the submitters, as the deputisers have said as well, the hedges have actually grown over a period of time, and as we know, 10 years isn't actually that long these days, and it's not long in the lifespan of a tree or a hedge either. So I mean, even if we go in and put some native planting in there, what we'd quite like to do is make sure that we do leave some space for, if we're not going to have a pathway, at least leave some space for people to actually be able to meander down that side of things. You will have heard from Max pointing out the fact that everybody goes onto the other side, and you can see from the photo in the report as well, that's a little bit space limited on the other side as well once people are parking their vehicles in there. So look, I don't doubt that with 2 deputisers, rather than hearing me kind of talk too much about the report, you're probably bursting with questions. So I'll leave it over to you to guide the conversation from here.
So questions, anybody for Grant? Sorry, Andrew. Yep. Sorry.
Sorry, it took me forever to even unmute. Grant, the obvious question is ways and means to fund the removal of the hedge as quickly as possible. You know, so that's because that's the $1 million question. You can see from in my view, it's the majority are supportive of it. There's enough logic to it and whatnot, but clearly you ain't got there's no established budget for it. Are there? Can you see ways that that the hedge could be removed in whole or part more quickly than what the other grant's paper implies with 2024 long-term plan? Yes, and why I'm saying yes is that I think that we could look at some options to actually make things better down there without just spending. One of the concerns that I have is that over the next 2 or 3 years, in essence, what we'd be doing is going and maintaining that hedge twice. Now, because this report's taken quite a while to get to the board post the, in fact, it's almost a year since we consulted with the community, that hedge has grown quite significantly. So any work that we do to it now, quite rightly, as Max and Joe have pointed out, is going to be more expensive anyway. We didn't do any trimming last year because of the request from the community to say, hey, well, can you save it so that we can put it towards the removal if that's what we end up doing. So there's still some funding available there operationally for that. Obviously, we'd be needing to do it within another 12 months anyway from the original time period of July last year. So there is some funding there. The reality is we are running quite tight in terms of our OPEX because that is rates generated. However, if this was to become a priority for the Woodend-Sefton Community Board, then really that's kind of what this report is about, for them to, I guess, push that back to staff and maybe even refer it up to council as well.
Thanks. Right, Philip, then Sandra, and then John.
Thanks, Grant. Presumably there is provision to ask the council if this funding could be brought forward by 1 or 2 years.
There is always that mechanism, yes, Councillor.
That would require council approval. The other thing I wondered, in terms of the recommendations, whether if the board was in agreement that the board could express its preference that this work be carried out in 22-23, if at all possible. So that could be a discussion, I guess. No, that's probably a question for the board they may like to think about. And I'd like to thank Joe and Max for coming along and giving us their views. I think it's very persuasive to hear from people.
Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify how much money is in the budget already for this hedge. I mean, if it was not trimmed last financial year, is that, am I understanding? There's 20,000 sitting there, and the budget, you've budgeted another 10 to 15,000. So there's something like, is there 35,000 up until June?
No, so theoretically we didn't spend the 20,000 last season. So in essence, there would be,
that's the current year still.
Yeah.
So there's only 20,000.
And there would potentially have been another trim next financial year.
So going into just after winter, like end of June 30th, there's another 10 or 15,000. So
yeah, because realistically we would have looked to done the original cut last year in July, and then we would have looked to probably April to July next year to do the next cut.
So rather than 85,000, if you're just looking at the hedge, there's potentially you need 50,000 more or less, because you've got 20,000 that you didn't use last year, and another 10 to 15,000 that you would already have in the budget that we're considering submissions on, next month.
I think my maths would support that.
Yeah, okay, so it's a bit more. And just asking, are there any other funds that, is it a safety issue? It seems that the community does think it's potentially a safety issue. Does that mean there is any funds from any other magic account?
Yeah, no, it's not been confirmed that it's a safety issue from the roading team. And as far as funds goes, it's not something that they would look to put money towards.
Okay, well, the remedy is a submission to bring funding forward, I guess, failing all other avenues. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. John, can I just let Simon have, he's got something to say which might actually help us along the way, hopefully, Simon?
I hope so. Look, I know the submitters, and particularly Joe, the presenters, and particularly Joe, have been concerned that they might have missed their opportunity. But this report's been some time in the making. And so the issue predates the consultation period. So from my point of view, it's quite legitimate, should the board be minded to make a recommendation to the council to get this hedge removed in the 22-23 year, that Grant could bring a report to the deliberations meeting for the annual plan with options to fund phase accordingly to make that happen, consistent with the direction of the consultation and the deputations tonight, should you pass that, make a recommendation to the council for it to consider as part of its 22-23 annual plan, allocating funding to enable this to happen in that financial year.
Thanks, Simon. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, Grant, I noticed in your when I read your report, you made a mention about firewood take from the hedge. Is that correct?
Generally, we can do that if the contractor who does it agrees to that. Otherwise, generally, we would look to mulch and reuse. But there are instances, we've just done it at Milton Park, actually, where some of it was turned into firewood, which actually turned into a cost recovery for us.
I was just thinking, with a hedge of that size and proportions, there'd be a tremendous amount of firewood come out of it, and that could offset the cost of actually removal.
And that's a really fair point, John. We could actually get a contractor who is willing to do the work to look into that and see what viable wood there would be within there.
Thanks, there. I would actually like to move something. I would like to move A, that we receive the report, B, that we approve the removal. I'll come back to C. D, that we note the delegation sits with us. But E, what I would like to replace with that, we recommend that green space go to council, to ask council to consider funding removal of the hedge in the 22-23 year, recognising that it is a late request to the annual plan, but there is reasons for that it is late. So we would actually like to see that happening in the 22-23 year. I would also move, so that would be replacing E, note F's fine, and G, removing the words at the end of in 2024/2025, which would make it notes that the hedge would be maintained at health and safety levels until its removal. I think that should probably stay in there. Regarding the planting plan, I actually agree with Grant, and I think a more detailed concept plan should be prepared for planting to come back to the community board and the community. So I would move that to replace C. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Who was that, Mark? Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
That's right, it's hard when I can't see you. Right, my reasoning for this is because the cost of trimming the hedge is high, and ongoing trimming will stay high. It needs a good trim now. I was down there this afternoon, and it needs a heck of a good trim now. So that would be at least $20,000, I would imagine. Then it would need another trim, probably late 23 into 24. So again, as Sandra said, you've already, this money's already being spent. So you'd have $35,000 spent on trimming it, only to then remove it. In some ways, it's better to bite the bullet now and do it. And if it's not removed, those trimming costs just carry on and on and on. Replacing it with native planting, that's going to provide a habitat and food supply for native birds and provide shelter. So it will actually provide a shelter belt for the houses as well, without that shading aspect. And it does. I was down there, would have been after 3 this afternoon, and it was getting pretty shaded then. So yeah, I wasn't surprised at that one. Andrew, have you got something you want to say? No, sorry, it was Mark that seconded. Sorry, Mark.
No, I just think it makes sense to not waste the money on trimming it, but try and bring forward. I would like to see that the planting concept plan, if the removal gets approved or gets brought forward, that the planting plan follows not far after.
Philip.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could you just read out the amended E?
Amended E. So E was recommend that Green Space, so ask that Green Space ask Council to consider bringing the funding for the removal of the hedge forward in the next annual plan to the 22/23 financial year, recognising that it is a late request under the annual plan, but there are reasons for that.
I just wondered, with your approval in the meeting, whether we could use the word request.
Request, yep.
Which might be more appropriate.
Yep, I'm happy with that. Mark, are you happy with that?
Yep. Yes, I am.
Amend that. So Grant has suggested we could also look at putting a time frame on getting the landscape plan back to the community board so that we can then engage with the community, which may well be a wise idea as well. What do you think would be a fair time frame, Grant, considering workloads?
Look, I think given that we've already done some work, there's 3 months to go before the end of the financial year, I would expect it to come to your July or August meeting. Because we then still have to consult afterwards. So I think, 2 months is probably enough.
So we could build that into C as well, so that we have requested a detailed concept plan for native planting to come to the community board by August this year. Is that all right with you, Mark, as seconder?
Yep.
Any other comments from anyone? Andrea.
I think Grant's comment about putting it to community, but I do challenge when we've already gone out to the community already, is this just delaying the inevitable? Because we've already been out to the community already and they've stated what they want. So I'm very conscious that we can go back and forth with community consultations, but really I think it's pretty evident on what the community wants. And that's my personal opinion. Thank you.
It's just around the planting, the native
I
planting.
appreciate that, but that's already been noted here with the report we've received back. I just don't see the merit of going back to the community again for another time when we actually have it pretty clear what they are wanting from us, because we've actually had that already, that consultation. That's just how I feel. Thank you, Shona.
I don't think the consultation actually included what would be planted in its place. I'm not sure. Simon.
That was my point, Madam Chair, that I don't think there was an intent to go back to the community about relitigating the removal, but that a concept design for what would happen in its place would be made available for feedback. And I think that's the sentiment that Andrea is, it won't reopen the issue, but it furthers implementing the direction of travel agreed tonight.
Okay, I'm actually just reading the consultation document that went out, and it says, if removal of the hedge is preferred by the community and approved by the community board, options on whether to replant a new shelter belt or leave it unplanted will be determined in the future and would be subject to availability of funding. We would also need to talk to nearby property owners. If replanting was considered in the future, it may be more appropriate to replant an alternative species in a slightly different location. So it could well be something that we probably should, talk to the community about, and looking at, do we leave a pedestrian strip and do something? Joe actually had a very interesting idea around a driftwood sort of path, because having been there this afternoon, one of the problems I would see is actually, at the moment, everybody parks on the other side of the road, as you can see in the photo in the report. If that hedge is removed and there is a strip left there, a car is going to start parking over it. So, looking at concepts like that, and Joe's thought of perhaps, laying out some driftwood to along there to denote a walking path would deter cars from parking along there. Don't know.
My challenge to that, Shona, is I appreciate what Joe has said, but unfortunately, after 2 terms, I can appreciate how action can be slowed down with community consultation. Grant, I asked to you, or even to Simon, is there ever a time where you go back to the community and say, we can go back to community consultation, but this is where we're seeing it at? And if you're, you know what I mean? Like if we're happy to proceed with this, or asking the question, do you want a community consultation? I'm just trying to avoid the time, because I know how these things can drag on. That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at, because time seems to be the pressing thing with the community. Thank you.
Look, I certainly appreciate the concern. I guess we've seen some pretty passionate presentation tonight about this issue. I'm imagining that there will be views about the finer details of what happens in place of the hedge. And I just think we need to be attuned to that possibility, Andrea. And I think Grant will be keen to complete the process to a point where removal and replacement is done as rapidly as possible, bearing in mind that if there's to be replanting, then there's a new season coming up and those kinds of considerations. But Grant, you may have some other comments.
Yeah, look, I appreciate the comment. In terms of community engagement, this one wouldn't need to be too long, because realistically, in terms of replanting it or what the replanting plan might look like, we do already have the bones of that within the report. The only thing that we don't have at the moment is community endorsement to put that particular kind of planting in. However, that could actually be done relatively promptly, probably within a 2-week window with a decent engagement plan. We know that we've got the direct neighbours across the road and people are already engaged in this. We've got 2 of them on the call here tonight, so it wouldn't be difficult for us to get information in front of people and say, you know, we can ratify this at the same time as writing a shadow report, so that once we get all of that feedback in, we can actually put that up to the community board, because really that would just be a case of confirming the planting style or the planting species that we'd be looking at. And we could then just make sure that the community has had that final tick in terms of what it is that we go and put in there. Yes, it would always save green space time if we went and just planted things, but quite frankly, that doesn't lead to good outcomes for us longer term, because we need the community to buy into these things.
Andrea.
Oh, only that thumbs up for Grant, and I thank both him and Simon for listening, obviously, to my merit of what I was trying to get across, and totally respect what they're saying. And I love to hear the word promptly, which is very foreign, I know, when it comes to local government. But thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate your arguments. So thank you.
Anything else from anybody?
I'll make a comment. Yeah, I like your idea of putting some driftwood down the side of the path. I was wondering whether in actual fact there could be some branches resurrected from the hedge that could be used. Waimakariri is fairly, a fairly durable timber. So there might be enough timber coming out of the hedge that could edge the path.
There's all sorts of things we could do, and I think we'll leave that to Green Space to look at the options of, how we do, whether we have to put no parking lines, which is probably not, the ideal situation, if we can actually prevent some other way of people parking along there. Yeah. So if there's nothing else, I'll put that to the vote. Does everybody understand the motion? Tia, have you got it recorded okay?
Yep, I'll second it.
It has been seconded, John. I'll just put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Thanks, Andrea. See that one. Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Grant, for getting us the report. And thank you again to Max and who are still there, and Joe, who are still there. We will try and get a solution. We will do our very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Right, the next report is, I do believe, on Cuckoo Beach as well. Martin. Yes, Martin's there. Hi, Martin. Good to see you.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me all right? Yeah, cool.
Everybody's going okay.
Cool.
Has everybody met Martin? I'm not sure.
No, I think.
Yourself, Martin.
Yeah, hi, my name's Martin McGregor. So I've been at Waimak District Council now for about 8 weeks or so. And so this is my first community board meeting, and it's great to meet everybody. I'm a local resident, so I've lived in the Waimak for about 6 years, but I've been commuting for the last 13 years working for the Christchurch City Council. So now I've jumped ship, and it's great to work local with you guys. So yeah, very good to meet you.
You've seen the light. Go.
Absolutely.
We're very impressed.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So tonight's report is regarding the spatial planning at the Cuckoo Reserve. This is very much community driven. We've been approached by a number of groups seeking space or access to the reserve for a number of initiatives, be it a pump track or a volleyball net or a club rooms for the Northside board riders. We also have, in addition to that, the surf club, who are considering plans for their building going forward. So in terms of addressing these needs or desires efficiently, the best approach we decided, working with with Andrew and Shona is to create a spatial plan for the reserve to take all of this into account. So what I'm seeking from the board here tonight is an endorsement or support, I guess, of the action plan that was attached to the report, and then also approval to do an initial consultation. And the basis of that initial consultation is to just canvass the community to make sure that we've got everything before we partake on this journey, and that there's nothing else out there that people would like to be considered or factored into this process. So with that, I'll take the report as read, but happy to answer some questions.
Thanks, Martin. Any questions from anyone? You must have done a very good report, Martin. We've got absolutely no questions.
There will be plenty of opportunities down the track to discuss this. Yeah.
Andrew.
If I may, this whole process does my head in times. Why I can't say, and I just confine, but I understand it has to be questions now. I just, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify. Shona and I have been involved in this, and are totally supportive of this way forward. I think it's a great thing to be doing and getting, so totally supportive of the paper here. I don't actually have any questions.
Now I do have one. Would it be made extremely clear in the communications that go out to the community around that there is no funding sitting in behind this, because I don't want to get expectations up that A, B, and C are going to happen. That would be I really want those. I don't want expectations raised from the community that, oh, we're going to get this, we're going to get that, and the council's going to pay for it.
Yeah, I think certainly that concern is shared by staff also, and when we had an initial meeting just last week with our consultation team, we certainly raised that as a risk. So yeah, absolutely, that'll be factored in.
Thanks, Martin. Simon.
Madam Chair, look, from a management team point of view, I guess that was the one issue about this exercise, and I'm not at all taken away from the initiative. But as soon as we do some planning, then that builds expectations. So apart from the fact that there's no budget, it may be if there was, Grant, Martin, explanatory information about the sorts of things that council does fund and the sorts of things that it doesn't, because that might help people queue when they start getting creative, no disrespect to them, about what is practical, realistic, fundable, and what isn't. So that might be a little bit of additional information that would help manage expectations to a good result. The last thing, of course, we want is a fantastic, ambitious plan that will not be realised for 20 years.
Thanks, Simon. Grant and then Andrew.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. I just wanted to reiterate just a point there to Simon. All of the ideas that have come forward for this spatial plan have actually come forward from the community, and they've all come forward from the community wanting to fund them as well. What the main reason that we've decided to go with this is that we couldn't individually work with each of those groups in isolation from the community and kind of give away some of the limited space that we've actually got within the reserves in Waikaku. And we also didn't want to take those groups too far down the track without actually communicating with the community to see if they even wanted additional assets and resources actually put onto some of these reserves. One of the other key things in here as well is that we are going to have to address the conversation around the flooding of the domain and some of those things. Yes, that's part of a wider picture with what's going on with the drainage team, but certainly it has an impact in terms of how the reserves and the domain will be used in the future as well. So we can make that crystal clear that the community's come forward with all of these great plans it wants to fund. We're just looking at how best to allocate the space.
Thanks, Grant. Andrew and then Simon.
No, Grant summarised exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
Thanks, Andrew. Simon, did you had your hand up, I believe?
No, I was just giving a thumbs up.
Oh, is that what it was? I need to go to Specsavers. Get my eyes tested. Any other questions from anybody? Anybody like to move something? Thank you, Andrew. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Philip. Right. Anything you'd like to say, Andrew?
No, nothing whatsoever. I think the paper is self-explanatory and good to see it underway. And I think the issue about funding is important, even if all the groups so far have come forward and said they're not expecting any council funding, other than perhaps the surf club. But it's a good thing to do, and there is, you can see there is potential for not just expectations, but well, maybe that is the right word, but not just financial expectations about use of the land. So it will be, whilst I think it's a very positive thing, we might just have to be careful to manage how people perceive it and blah, blah, blah. But that's all part of the consultation process. Thank you.
Now, Philip, did you want to say anything?
Just briefly to say, I think it's a sensible way forward. So I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thanks, Philip. Anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Oops. I was thinking you want to say something again. Right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hand or say aye. Those against? That's carried. So thank you very much, Martin. Now you've got your work cut out for you. Next stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Very much.
Cheers.
Now, I don't know if we want to head to the workshop with Tori, so then she can have the rest of her evening to herself. Tori, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a little person here who just required some help. So
that's okay. Do you want to defer it? Do you want to just keep going at your end and we can keep going with our meeting, or?
No, I'm fine if that's okay from your end.
Yeah, it would just mean then you'd have the rest of the evening to yourself, which might be quite nice, because Grant tells me he's here till the end, the bitter end of the meeting.
Thank you. I'm having a few technical issues my end with a second screen, so I've asked Tia to kindly share her screen and I'll just speak to it if that's okay.
Yep, that's right.
And can you hear me okay? It's all good?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So thanks for staying on. I realize it's a long night for you, and I have done a PowerPoint, but it's really just to have some visual maps to look at, so it's a little bit easier to explain, but I'll keep it quite brief. So I'll just quickly run through a little bit of context. So as you know, we're here to talk about the Woodend Beach Domain project, which is the renewal of the playground and toilets. In particular tonight, it would be really good for myself, for staff, to go away with a preferred location for both the playground and toilets, so then we can go away and start planning some community engagement around that. So I'll just ask Tia to go on to the next page. Thanks, Tia. Just to give a little bit of context, and I know that you'll be well aware of where Woodend Beach Domain is, but just to, I guess, discuss a couple of things to set the scene. So it's in that red circled area there, as you know, which is part of the Tuhatara Coastal Park. So I have been out and spoken to Greg Burns, and he has given me his preferred locations and ideas, which I'll discuss further in the report. I guess the only other thing on here to note is that the location of the domain does provide quite a link to those wider cycleways and walkways, the Pegasus Trail. Okay, thanks, Tia. So just to zoom in to the site for some discussion. So again, you'll know where these things are, but we've got in the blue circle there, the existing location of the toilet. In the red area, we've got the existing playground. The car park stretches, quite a distance. It's sort of a hub of the space, really. Greg Burns he's indicated that the trust are quite happy with the layout of the car park and that as it is. The only problem there is a few drainage issues. In the green, we have the trust office, and in the purple is the stage, which has recently been relocated there. The idea behind the stage, I understand, is to be able to hold events in that grass space and encourage picnicking and things during summer. And Greg Burns did say that they've had a couple of events down there. He also talked a bit about how the grass space on the right of that cycle walkway path, the blue line, is again a picnic area, but it's more of a relaxed space where people tend to drive in and open their car boot and picnic out of there and enjoy that space. So he's reluctant to see that change. Okay, Tia, we'll go on to the next one. So just to discuss the existing playground a little. So we have in that playground at the moment, we have a fort, a climbing frame, some swings, and a rocking horse. And as a reason for having this funding, we have 95,000 allocated to the renewal of the toilet. Leading to that was the identification that it is up for renewal due to condition and health and safety. So from council's perspective, we are quite keen to see that playground replaced and renewed, but we'll discuss that further a bit later in the presentation. I guess it's worth noting too that the area is quite boggy and there's often water lying throughout the whole space really. For that reason, I have spoken to council's engineers and they have suggested that were we to renew the playground, it would be better to raise it at least half a metre. And that, I guess, the reasons for that would be usability, but also the maintenance costs, the ongoing maintenance costs of having to renew the bark and the breakdown of the area due to it constantly being boggy. Just on the location plan there, I guess it's also important to note, and it has already been raised by Doug and Anna, and just the distance from the playground to the toilet is quite vast, and I guess as a parent of a little one, that can be problematic. It's nicer, to be able to see your little ones if they want to go to the toilet, if you're in a family situation there. Okay, Tia, I'll get you to move on to the next one. And this is the location of the toilets. So as you can see there, it doesn't have a great interface with the car park side. And it definitely does need renewal. Council have allocated 200,000 towards the renewal of the toilet block. And through council's toilet strategy, that would indicate a 4-unit unisex, 4-bay unisex toilet block. So we can discuss that a little further later on if you like to. It has relatively poor access from the car park. It is on a mound and doesn't have great formed access, and you sort of have to go around the back, so that's something to take into consideration. And I say it's at this point not associated with the playground well, so there's an opportunity there to improve. Okay, thanks, Sia. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into some location options which we can discuss, and I'll just run through them and then we can come back to them later if that's all right. So the first one is the preferred option, I guess, by which Doug has raised with you by the Woodend Community Association, and that is to not so much to leave the toilets where they are, but to renew those, but to leave the playground mainly where it is and to make upgrades and additions to that. The next option would be to leave them both in those locations, but to renew both facilities or assets. I guess from staff's perspective, we can see some problems with leaving the playground in the location that it is. As I said, we would be looking to raise the playground, and that's really difficult to do while also leaving some of the equipment in place. Also, if we were to start leaving things and trying to fix them up, it doesn't really solve the problem of them being of an age where they need to be renewed, and we'd have to bring them back to compliance, which is quite a costly exercise. From a location idea, again, it's not ideal having the playground, the toilet and other facilities like the car park and the trust office all in different locations. We can see some benefit in bringing that playground closer to the car park and associating it with the toilet. That's probably enough for that one. I'll just work to the next option. Thanks, Tia. This option, Greg Burns has identified that he doesn't support, but I just thought it was worth raising it with you so you can understand the reasons why not, and just to know that we have considered this space as an option, and that is to move the playground up to where the existing toilet block is now, but with a new toilet building. So it would be a new playground and it would be in a new location. Greg Burns's concerns with us moving it into the playground or the play space into this space is the proximity to the car park. He feels that there are some safety issues potentially there. Also that it does take away that relaxed casual picnic area that I discussed earlier. And he does note that this is probably one of the wettest areas of the reserve. So he's not keen to see that option go ahead. Okay, I'll move on to the last option. So option 3 is again to renew both assets, to move the toilet over towards where the trust office is there, and to move the playground up to be closer to the toilet and car park, to make circulation a little easier around the space. As I mentioned earlier, the stage has now been relocated into that area, and Greg Burns is not keen to see that space change, and he would like to see it maintained as an area where the events can be held. And staff are quite supportive of this option. It does bring all the assets together, and I think it would be quite a usable space. Okay, I'm asking to move on here. So don't be alarmed by these images. I'm not suggesting that these are the play spaces that we would create or should create. I'm really just raising some ideas, as Doug and Anna raised, that there are some other opportunities for play ideas, play equipment, play spaces that we could do there that don't have to replace like for like. You've already raised a half basketball court, which is certainly something that we could consider, but we'd probably be wanting to engage with the community and get some ideas of all the ideas that the community would like to see, and then we'd bring that back to you. So I've just put a little pump track, BMX track there, some swings, a slide, and a few nature play items. It is quite a nice natural space, and Greg Burns is also really keen to see some more natural sort of play or equipment be placed there. I guess the other thing I wanted to note was, that's okay, T, you can leave it on there, that's fine. The other thing I wanted to note was that we did seek some costs for play equipment if we were to replace like with like. And as I say, the budget allocated towards the project is 95,000. But yeah, to replace like with like, it came out at around 200,000, you know, which is well above the budget. But it may not be that we need to replace like with like. There are some opportunities there to do potentially some other play spaces, play opportunities. So I've just put the 4 options up here, and I'll open it up for a bit of discussion, really. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Grant McLeod, you're happy to jump in and answer any questions as well, if you'd like to. Yeah, I'll leave it to you, Shona.
Thanks, Tori. That's great. It's really good having the photos and the aerial shots. That actually really helps a lot. So thank you very much for doing that, and for your discussions with Greg Burns, because it's good to get his input, because he is there all the time, so he knows where the boggy parts are, shall we say.
Yeah.
So it's really good. Philip, you've got a question? Or something to say?
Yeah, Tori, who are the likely users of the playground? Locals or visitors to the area with their parents?
I'd say a bit of both, really. Grant McLeod, you can jump in here, but I wouldn't have necessarily said it was it would be a destination play space. It'd be more for children of the local area. But if you've got a different opinion, or Grant McLeod, have you got any ideas to throw in there?
Of course, I have an opinion, Tori. Yeah, look, I think it's relevant because what this is providing is a play opportunity, not just for people who are visiting the area, but also it's for local people as well, which is what Doug and Anna, I think it was, had actually mentioned earlier as well. One of the things that you'll get with a space like this, people are kind of going to them for a little bit of a longer visit. So for some of the local kids, it's great because they can actually just jump on their bike or their horse, whichever one it is that they've got, or just their feet, and actually just go exploring and kind of run around. The playground actually becomes a support mechanism to that. It's not necessarily the main reason that somebody turns up somewhere, but it certainly provides an outlet and a recreational opportunity for people once they get to a space like this. But it's not going to be the playground itself isn't the destination. It's just one of the things that they'll engage with whilst they're there.
Just looking at the location of the playground and/or toilet, the CP whatever design features for safety, where would they dictate these facilities should be? And do you want them in an open area close to a road access, or do you want them tucked away in a remote area, which I could say the existing playground is in?
Great, Grant, again, you're welcome to jump in, but
yeah.
I would have said it would, for accepted values, it would be better to have them closer to the car park. But
yeah, you would definitely bring them from out the back of the park, because I guess the toilet in itself would not do well in a SIP-TED audit, which is crime prevention through environmental design, just in case anybody's wondering. If we were to go and do an audit of that, those toilets right now would be, it would probably recommend that those toilets actually be moved to a more open area. Plus also, if we looked at it from an accessibility perspective, it wouldn't do well through the access group. I think John's pointed out many times in the past as well that the doors don't open that well. So, you know, it's not ticking a lot of boxes in its current format.
I was actually down there this afternoon, went out on a wee trip round this afternoon, and I saw somebody actually trying to find their way into the toilet because, as you say, it doesn't front the right way, so it is almost quite hidden. Interesting enough, there was, while I was there, a carload pulled up, and it was 2 mothers with 4 kids, and they were actually visitors. They weren't locals, and it was quite interesting to watch. You know, the 2 boys, they went straight to the playground. Interestingly enough, the bit of won't call it play equipment because it isn't, but what the two girls went for was actually the stage. And they put on a little performance while I was there, which was quite fascinating. So sometimes it's not always what we think, you know, play equipment can be quite different. For those girls, it was the stage, you know, they put on a performance and they were, you know, they had great fun with it. From an accessibility point of view, Grant's right that the toilets and Tori, the toilets are just completely inaccessible. There is no real path formed to them. I'd have to say if the playground stayed where it is, raising it up 1/2 metre makes accessibility just so problematic that, you know, it wouldn't be funny. I suppose with the toilets, so you'd be talking about a 4-bay unisex. Would there be any changing rooms, Tori?
Yes, so I guess that's something for discussion, but when I did seek prices for those, I did sort of indicate to get an idea of price that we would want those cubicles larger and with a little bench or something in there so that they could be used as changing rooms as well. But you don't have to do that. It's something that we can discuss further later.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And yeah, Doug had the idea of keeping an outdoor shower, which I know at like Pegasus Beach, it is extremely well used, the outdoor shower. So that's something. Right, now.
On the other, can I ask a question?
Go, Mark, and then we'll have Sandra and then Simon.
So on the other side of the car park, which is where the sound show used to be, is that part of the domain? Could that be somewhere that the toilet's located?
It's exactly the first question I asked when I went down there, Mark. It's actually within the lease for the campground.
Oh, is it? Yeah, because it's sort of hard looking at that toilet relocation. You want it sort of somewhere that people going to the beach can easily use it to get changed or go to the toilet, and then you want it to the playground. So I was thinking over there would be, but if it's camping ground, it's not going to be. But the camping ground's owned by the council anyway, isn't it?
It's leased out, so we don't have rights to just do anything there that we want to. It's got to go through a process. If I can just say, in terms of the toilet location that Tori's proposed, it's quite prominent, so it would pick up those people that were going into the beach as well. Realistically, or what we find a lot of people like when they're going to an asset like that is that they actually just like to know where the amenities are. And so if they can see it as soon as they can see it, that's better because they then know that that's available.
Yep. And I mean, I just think of it where it is at Pegasus. I mean, it's right by as you're going to the beach, it's right there, and at Waikuku Beach, even though Waikuku beaches aren't that good, but it's there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sandra, and then Simon.
Thank you. I like option 3 with the loos closer to Haitara base camp, seeing they don't have decent toilets there. Well, they didn't last time I was there. It was that little shed at the back. But I just wondered the location of the stage, is that considered to be an adjunct to the playground, or would the stage necessarily need to shift somewhat? But Shona said that the kids that visited today used the stage for play. Do those 3 things work well together? Certainly I like certainly option 3 stands out for me as ticking all the boxes, the only thing being the position of the stage. If you had a concert there, is it, and there were, well, if there are kids playing in the playground, that's no issue, is it?
No, I think Greg Burns was quite supportive of that in terms of it, you know, serving many purposes. If there was an event on, that kids could be using the playground at the same time. He did raise the possibility that he wouldn't be opposed to that access road being moved a little to the east, I guess, to allow a little bit more space for the playground if we wanted to, but we can get to that stage later. But yeah, I think you could work the playground in quite nicely in that space.
Thank you. Good.
Simon.
My question was about Tikahaka being here. Is it our understanding that they're here for the long haul, and might they at some point in the future want additional accommodation, and is that a factor to be borne in mind in thinking about this?
I'm going to refer to Grant for that to answer that.
Simon, there's certainly been some conversations around what Greg's aspirations might be for the future. So we'd certainly be talking to him along those lines throughout this. There is no way that we would do anything down there without his input, or potentially finding out about something later on that might implicate the design of it as well. So Tori's certainly had a lot of those conversations with Greg to make sure that we're up on the play with what it is they might be doing. And if there's any kind of extension or anything other that they would be looking at, we don't believe what we're currently proposing would compromise anything there.
Andrew and then Sandra.
Okay, thanks. I think Sandra was you missed it. Sandra was actually before me, but I'll be
sorry.
Yeah, you know, not steal your space, Sandra. Just two quick comments, Tori. That ability to move the access road, I think, is interesting, because it gives that really is a bit of a wasteland now. It's so damp, that area off to the east. And it would give us some more flexibility with where those toilets might be put, and give it space from the trust building as well. So I just like that thought process be extended more, and filling in a bit of that swamp to create an access road is, to my mind, is actually kind of a win-win.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I'll definitely look into that.
Sandra. We can't hear you. You're muted.
I think she was lowering her hand from it having been raised.
Okay, that's fine.
No, I've said everything. I took my hand down. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Grant, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's just I guess I just want to address a few other things that we heard earlier in the night, just to make sure that that's kind of fully understood with what it is that Tori's presented here tonight. Probably one of the key concerns for us is the accessibility of the current playground. Now, if we were to raise that in accordance with what our engineers have told us, there's absolutely no way that we could keep any of the structural elements that are within that playground. The other thing that I would say as well is that with the horse and also with the fort, we're very unlikely to be able to bring those up to compliance standards under the new playground standards. So if we did any work within there, we'd immediately trigger that. And we'd immediately be against the guidelines or the playground standards. So there's not a lot that we can actually do there to retain those items. And trust me, I've had a horse in an engineering shop for about 2 years previously, trying to get someone to redesign one so that we could keep it, and it came back that we had to actually fix it in place. So it ended up just being a sculpture, which was a bit sad. But the reality is that the kinds of injuries that we've seen on those things, they've actually purposefully tried to design them out of being able to be retained or put into playgrounds. So that's just something to bear in mind with that. And hence why Tori was kind of alluding to the fact that, if we have to raise it by ½ a metre, there's no way that we can structurally keep any of the current playground. In terms of the budget that we've got 95, and I think that we've heard some really cool ideas tonight, but I just wanted to, I guess, put into context without killing dreams, just what sort of $95,000 might look like. Potentially, if you went and put a half court in, we could be looking at anywhere between sort of $25,000 to $35,000, just ballpark. That's without looking at what cost inflation in the market's kind of looking at the moment. To put a flying fox in, we know that it's not a dissimilar figure. We can kind of be anywhere from sort of like 20 up to 30 plus, depending on the geography that you're actually working with. Again, really, really popular with kids. Both of those elements. So I think that's a really good thing to be thinking about for the local community. It's then what else we can actually add in to make sure that we're covering the bases, not just for the sort of destination style play, in terms of everybody kind of coming down there and enjoying that from more of a kind of an older youth perspective. And when I say older youth, I'm actually talking sort of 9 to 13-year-olds for playgrounds. If we were to look at something like a pump track, again, they're around about they can be around about the sort of the $15,000 to $30,000 mark, depending on the materials that you've got to use, what you've got to import, and how you design it. And then looking at the likes of the Spider Space Net, you know, that's actually quite a high cost item as well. So just in terms of setting expectations, you're probably going to be able to afford maybe 1 or 2 of those sorts of elements, depending on what it is that we've got to do with the groundworks, and also kind of getting the footing and all that sort of stuff, and also raising the playground as well. So I guess that what I just want the board to know is that we can investigate those things, bring back some of those costs, and I guess kind of let you know what each of those looks like. But sometimes, this might sound a little bit crude, but you can kind of look at a playground design almost like a smorgasbord, where you're sort of building your own dinner, where you can go, yep, I'm going to have one of the option A ones, I'm going to have a couple of the option B, and then that'll leave us with 1 for option C. Or you might have 3 from C, 1 from B, and the A. So we've got to make sure that we create a mix of playground experiences within there, but we've also got to make sure that we create competitive and non-competitive spaces as well. And what I mean by that is exactly what Shona saw today, with people being able to actually break off and do their own thing. It means that they're actually able to do that kind of fantasy style play without necessarily being in the competitive space of the playground. So there's a lot of things that actually kind of go into that, and there's a lot of thinking that Tori puts in behind the scenes around the sorts of things that she'll propose to you. It's not always a case of going, okay, what's the budget and how much space have we got? It's actually looking at it and going, how much of that play value are we actually going to be putting in here? Making sure that we've got the vestibular system development for the kids, right the way out to providing a challenge for the older kids that might be, you know, in sort of that 10 to 13-year-old bracket. 13-year-olds tend to be on the real extreme of actually utilising playgrounds. It's normally that kind of, to be honest, by themselves, people that are kind of like gung-ho. It's normally 7 up to 11 or 12. And then different elements like pump tracks, half courts, that sort of thing, they actually bring a different demographic to play, and actually a wider demographic. So just wanted to kind of put some of that context there, because 95,000 might sound like a lot, but once we get into it, it's actually going to disappear pretty quick.
Thanks, Grant. Tori, what do you?
I'm trying to be pessimistic.
No, thank. It is good to actually hear that. Tori, what are you actually looking from us tonight? Something around the location and.
Yes, just to steer on the location really, and then we can go away and do some community engagement on what we'd like to see in that space.
Anybody got any preferences? We've had one. Was it you, Sandra? Was it option 3, wasn't it? Anybody else got any thoughts around locations?
Can I just ask a question? If the current playground wasn't raised, so I know it floods, but how, and this year's been an exceptional year, I mean, how, is it a month a year that it's normally affected, or is it longer than that?
I'm not a local, but I understand it's most of the winter to some degree. But I mean, also we have to consider sea level rise as well, which, you know, I think the site is only increasingly going to be wet, be a bit boggy, unfortunately. So it's sort of looking to the future and future-proofing it, really.
I'm sort of just thinking, if it's raised, well, there's not really going to be, and relocated, there's going to be no money for any enhancements, from what I can tell from what Grant said. So,
yeah, I guess, I mean, say that we'd raise it, but as Grant said, it may end up that the community indicate they only want a couple of pieces in there, and that could be different. For example, it could be a little pump track, BMX track, in which case it wouldn't matter so much if it was boggy around the edges. It wouldn't have bark, which was breaking down all the time from being wet. We could raise particular areas we need to if we're putting a slide in or some swings. Yeah, Grant, you're welcome to jump in, but I think we can probably design it in a way where we just raise areas where required if we need to, but also, yeah, have a good look at what we do choose to put in there that wouldn't be as affected by being damp.
Cool.
Thanks for that. You finished there, Mark?
Yeah, thank you.
Philip.
Yeah, I like option 3 as far as the toilet is concerned. I'm a little bit open to where the playground should be located. I think it needs to be down the car park end of the park. The other thing I wondered was whether the existing playground equipment, the wooden sort of rustic stuff, could just simply be left where it is. As Grant indicated, once you start upgrading it, you really get rid of it. So is leaving it where it is and having the new playground equipment further down towards Beach Road an option?
I appreciate what you're sort of trying to achieve there, Councillor. The reality is that would definitely exceed our levels of service in terms of provision for the area, but probably more concerning is the fact that we're well aware of the fact that those playground pieces, and the reason that we've brought this in for a renewal is the fact that they're no longer compliant under safety standards. So the ideal would be to have that playground removed realistically within the next 5 years. When you've got those sorts of elements, you're really kind of looking at it from a council staff member perspective to go, hey, when is it that we can actually renew that playground, because we're not entirely happy with the safety performance of it. You know, ideally it would have already been renewed by now, given the age of the equipment. So I guess from a green space manager perspective, I would rather see that was decommissioned at some point in the future.
Thanks, Grant. Anybody else got any preference around location? Andrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as location, that's indifferent to me. The fact is that we can have a new toilet and actually enhance our playground, then that's a priority for me. Whatever can make it work as far as financially with the council, that's the primary thing for me. So regardless if it can work with any of the options, I'm with that. Back to as far as the pump track, which Tori brought up before, and apologise, Tori, if you're not privileged to some other board detail we've had, but we've actually had this raised, and I really resonate with what Grant said about not competing with other areas. And so with the pump track, we've actually had already communication and a presentation from the Cuckoo Beach, where they would like to actually have a pump track there. So I guess I'm totally in agreement that, Grant, we would not have two. There'll be one or the other, being so close proximity. So if we could work together so that one has it and one doesn't. But as far as location, Madam Chairs, you're asking preference option. Mine is purely just to get working toilets and a safe playground for our children, whether it be 1, 2 or 3, whatever works for council to make it happen. Thank you for taking my comments.
Thanks, Andrea. I suppose my being there today and actually seeing how it works, I mean, I'm not there all the time, but just, yeah, I know accessibility is a real issue around playgrounds and toilets. Where the toilets are is quite inaccessible, but still having the toilets close to the car park, I think, is needed. So, you know, certainly probably option 3 is quite good for that. Playground somewhere around option 3, because I think having that in close proximity, certainly when I talked to the 2 mothers there today, they were like, you know, the toilets have to be close by, and I pointed out where they were and they were like, no, that's way too far. So, and, you know, I did notice that it was pretty hard for the, you know, the mothers were sort of keeping an eye on the girls on the stage way down that end, but they were up at the playground end with the boys. So, yeah, it would be nicer to have them closer together probably. But that's just my thoughts. Anybody else got any thoughts? Any guidance for Tori? That's what she's looking for from us, so. I think that's all we're going to get, Tori. Does that help?
Yeah, that's a great help. Thank you. Yep, so we'll go away and have a good look at that and we've taken your suggestions on board. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your work so far. And I mean, these things are a journey. We know that from doing playgrounds previously. They are a journey, and so we'll get to know you quite well, Tori. I'm sure.
No, that's great. Thank you. It'll be a great project.
Thank you very much, and thank you again, Doug, for your work. And it is a journey, and we will work together, and we will get a good outcome.
Yes, I just hope that you know, the local people can have a bit of input into things before we go too far down the track.
Thanks for that, Doug. Tori will definitely work with what she's got, and yeah, we will move forward. So thank you very much, Tori. We'll let you get back to your family.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Thanks. Right, our next report is Sefton, which is Grant. Again, Grant's filling in for Andy Coker tonight.
Yeah, no, apologies that you haven't got Andy again. You've got me. So look, what I'd be quite keen to just point out with this report is that this was around the consultation that we did to allow the Sefton Hall Committee to actually be able to move up to the domain. As you recall, last year, the committee made the decision to look at relocating the hall itself. So they wanted to move up to the domain. Council has since allocated them $200,000 for seed funding within the LTP. Where the group are currently at is that if they can get a license to occupy, or I guess an indication as we've put within the recommendations here, that they can actually start to move forward with some of their funding plans. What we're also doing to the side of this as well is that Andy's actually working alongside of the group, and he's going to be taking a more active role with the group as well, in terms of actually getting the detailed design underway, and, you know, kind of getting them prepared for consenting and that sort of thing. One of the key things for the group, from my perspective, is that they actually get the support that they need from us, because they're fulfilling a council task, as it were, and actually meaning that we're not having to fund the building. And look, you know, what they're doing for their local community is actually really great, and I think they've been a little bit tested over the last few years just in terms of going through this process. You know, it's not been easy since the quakes. Councillor Redmond's obviously been working with them quite closely on their legal stuff as well. So he's well aware of the amount of hours that these volunteers have been putting in. And, you know, when we look at volunteer burnout, it's classic when it comes to needing new buildings and stuff like that, because it really takes it out of them. So look, what we're proposing here within the report really is a case of going, look, we want to give them a license to occupy for a fixed period of time so that they can actually have that security to go and get the detailed design and so forth in place. Now, the reason that we're looking at that is that we want them to be able to have some flexibility in terms of getting their design done, because at the moment we don't know how successful they're going to be with the quantum of finance that they can actually get available. So we don't want to make it too big to the point that they actually then end up with an area outside of the building that they're technically responsible for maintaining. So there would be some flexibility in terms of coming back to the board at some point in the future and actually going, look, this is actually the final design that they've ended up with. We'd like to tighten the lease back down to that building footprint so that they're not burdened by having to mow or responsible for any kind of concrete or asphalt areas outside of it. The other thing as well is that we want to make it crystal clear that we're not, with what we're proposing here, until they've actually got the funding and the approval to do the build, we will not be demolishing the current pavilion. So we don't want to go ahead and do that and then leave cricket in the lurch for a season or whatever from them not having that building or not knowing that it's actually fully funded and is going to be able to be delivered. And so, look, that's really the crux of what it is that we've put into the report here and suggesting up to the community board. So, look, I'm happy to take any questions from that.
Thanks, Grant. Any questions from anyone? I have one question, Grant, which is around the demolition of the current pavilion. Do you know if there's any asbestos in that building?
We have had our buildings tested and examined. Off the top of my head, I would need Andy's brain to answer that thoroughly. If it is, that would be taken into account in terms of us actually removing the building. That's the other part of this as well, is that we would need to work with the Sefton committee in terms of whether or not we would then demolish the building ourselves and then leave them with a clean site to come in and build on, noting that we're still not sure what quantum of finance they're going to get.
Yeah, that was actually one of my other questions, was around that, given that it is a council building, and in the report there is the expectation that the Public Hall Committee would demolish the pavilion, which would certainly add to their costs.
Yeah, and look, I think that it's a fair point that still lies on the table for us to work with them on how that would be approached. Again, they're volunteers, so there's only so much that from a staff perspective we can put on them.
Any other questions from anyone?
Hello. Grant,
yep.
I read this RSL report, and I never saw any mention of the rugby club. Have they got their own pavilion?
There's no rugby club at Sefton.
Sorry?
There's only cricket and tennis at Sefton Domain. There's only cricket and tennis.
There's no rugby too, I don't.
Rugby player Ashley now, John.
Yeah.
Sorry. What's that, Mark?
Rugby player for Ashley now.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
That's good. Any other questions from anybody? Philip.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question. I'm prepared to move.
Thank you, Philip. Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, sorry, Andrea's got her hand up. Andrea, what?
Sorry, if you're Andrew, is it?
No, Andrea's just got her hand up, but she's muted and I can't hear her, so I'm not sure.
She did have a
I'm sorry, I put me in the chat. I'd like to move to A through to H.
Okay, so Philip has moved that. So do you want to second that, Andrea?
Absolutely.
Okay. Philip, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It would be fair to say that the committee are somewhat frustrated by the delay, and they've been working at this for a number of years. I've really only been involved with trying to move the Sefton Library forward, and that in itself is also a rather frustrating process. As far as the library was concerned, which is going to be hopefully part of their funding, a letter was sent to Crown Law with the proposals to vary the trust. It took 6 months to get a reply from Crown Law, which came through about a week ago. So there are 1 or 2 amendments that have to be made, but things are obviously going very slowly for them. So I do try and encourage them to keep and hang in there, and they're doing that so far. So I see this as moving things forward, and they will have some positive progress. So very happy to support it.
Thank you, Philip. Andrea, anything you'd like to say?
Only that, if anything, out of being on this board for the last 2 terms, if I can see this getting over the line, then I'll think I've done something with our board, because we have worked with them ardently trying to get this across the line. And like Grant said, they're a quite exceptional group that they're wanting to do so much work on their own without the assistance of council, only probably for advisement and also for the lease of land. I appreciate that. But crikey, I'm pretty proud of what an amazing area they are, that they've done so much mahi on their own. And I'm proud if we can push them across the line and get it done. And that's just my little input, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Andrea, well said. Anybody else got anything to add? I would just like to throw my support fully behind it, just with that concern noted around the demolition of the existing pavilion. Certainly the whole committee have, they really have worked really hard, and I would like to thank council, particularly Grant, for loaning them Andy, as it were, and his expertise to actually help them, because that is something we did ask for in a couple of annual plan submissions, and it's good that council has provided that assistance, and Andy Cuckoo will be great working with them, and it is what they need, is to actually have somebody working alongside with them. So I'm absolutely thrilled about that. Anybody else got anything to add? Right, I'll put that to the vote. A through to H. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Grant. That was a good report, and Green Space has done very well tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We've enjoyed our time with you.
Well done, Grant. Crikey, yeah. Deserve a bottle of something.
I'll go and see if there's a whiskey. All right. You're well.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you so much. Right, we have got 3 discretionary grant applications. Andrea has indicated that she will sit out for the one on the Pegasus Residents Group, as she is a member of that group.
Actually, Madam Chair, there is no conflict of interest because she is the board's appointment to the Pegasus Resident.
She is actually on the committee on the.
I'm sorry.
So I think we'll probably take them individually, is going to be easier. Do you want to start with the replacement battery for the defib? Thanks, Tia. Anything you'd like to tell us about that one?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Pegasus Resident Group is applying on behalf of the residents of the Cuckoo Beach for funding for a replacement of the AEG battery that is used by the community. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tia. Anybody got any questions around that one? No. I would like to move that we fund actually $635 for the replacement battery, which is above the $500, but we do have money in the discretionary fund, and I would like to recommend that we pay the $635. It is safety equipment, and this has been, for a number of reasons, going on for some time. Yeah, do I have a seconder for that?
I second it.
We've got everybody wanting to second it. Philip, you had your hand up, so you're it. Philip, would you like to say something?
No, just to say I think it's a good use of funds. The person who obviously donated, I think it was the Dermoscopy Centre, if I'm recalling right, they're paying for some of the consumables. So it seems a good use of our funds to do the battery.
Thanks for that. Andrew, anything you'd like to say? You had your hand up before. No. Anybody else? Right, I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour of $635 for that one, say aye or put your hand up.
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Welcome back, Andrea. You can come back in now. Right, we've got the Woodend Netball Club.
Through you, Madam Chair, the Woodend Netball Club has grown substantially with the new developments of Rangiora and also in Pegasus, and they now have approximately 150 players. They are asking for new goalposts that would allow them to actually have 2 courts where the players can play on. The goalpost has got 2 rings that allows basically for junior and for senior players to be able to use them. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Tia? No, somebody like to move something? Andrew. John, John, you'll move?
Yeah, I'll move it. I think they should be donated the 500 they're asking for.
Thank you, John. Do I have a seconder? Is that you, Andrew?
I'll second it. Oh, okay.
Andrew seconding. John, anything you'd like to say?
No, I just think it's a really good use of funds.
Thanks for that, John. Andrew, anything you'd like to add? Anything from anybody else? Yeah, fully in support myself. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Now we have Renell's Community Cuppa. Tia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure everybody has been to one of these cuppas. They're quite enjoyable and the cake is yum yum. And there's a lot of people that actually goes to these cuppas. And it's a great community event that's been active in the community for a few years. And I'm happy to answer any questions that members might have.
Any questions for Tia? Anybody like to move something? Philip.
I'll move that we provide a grant of $500 for Renell's Community Cuppa.
You just like the cake, don't you, Philip? Right, do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, John.
Yep.
Philip, other than the cake, anything you'd like to say?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I do try and make an effort to go to these, but I get to go to about 1 in every 3 or 4. I find them very well attended, and it does engender community spirit and overcome isolation. And Renell herself, who I've got to know, is sort of a legend in her own lifetime. So it's a very good, well-run event, and for $500, you're getting good bang for buck.
Thank you for that. John, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's a good use of funds.
Anybody else got anything to say?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go against the $500, and I'm happy to have it recorded as well. They've received in the last 2 years $500 from us as a board, and this year I decided not to go for that, purely because we've already outlaid twice tonight with other entities that haven't asked for those particular things. So I'm happy to have it recorded that I do not vote for $500 towards the Renell's Cuppa. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. I would like to say that I will be supporting it. I am actually in quite a regular attendee of the Community Cuppa. Often tend to speak to just update people on what is happening either at council level, what consultations are around, and at community board level. Certainly the mayor attended the last one and was very well received. One before that was actually the annual plan drop-in. They did, the planners came along and did a session, and it was extremely well received. It certainly does mean there is a more engaged community, and the socialisation is quite amazing. I think the last one, I think there was 6 new people attended who hadn't attended before, which was pretty amazing. And I think this funding just allows them time to actually get established as themselves away from the Pegasus residents group, and actually find a way of the funding going forward. So I will be supporting it. Anybody else got anything to add? Right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand. Right. Those against?
Andrea.
Anybody else? Okay, so Andrea said she'd like that recorded. So that will be recorded. So that is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Tia. I would actually like to say that all three applications, particularly the Woodend Netball and Renown's Kappa, were so much detail, and they were fantastic applications. Right, we've got the where is my agenda? What are we up to? So I have to go back to my beginning. Right, so we've got the ratification of the Community Board submission to the draft annual plans for the Waimakariri District Council and ECAN. Tia, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I will take the report as read.
Thanks, Tia. Any questions from anyone?
I'd just like to make a comment. I thought they were really well presented submissions. I really enjoyed reading them. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks for that, Philip.
Could I just declare an interest in the submission to the council, because I may very well be deliberating on your submission. So I'll take no part in that discussion or vote.
Thank you for that, Philip. Now, do I have a mover to move ratification of those two submissions? Thank you, John. I'll second that. John, anything you've already made a comment? Anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. I haven't really got anything to say. Anybody else got anything to add? Right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Raise your hand. Those against? That's carried.
An abstention from me.
Yes, noted. Right, where are we up to now? Correspondence. We had the update on the walking and cycling network plan consultation, which has been delayed. Any questions around that? Anything you'd like to add, Tia?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Only comment is frustration at the delay. And that's just personally from me as a board member and also as a cyclist, that this has been an ongoing thing that has been gone on too long. And I appreciate there's been a change of staff and those have been heading the project, but I surely would have thought there would have been some positive outcome by now. And I'm happy to have that noted.
Andrea?
Can I just comment on what Andrea said? Just bear in mind that this consultation, the money for the project is some years out. So, I mean, while it was actually me that asked Ellie and where it was, because the last I noted was it was going to be consulted on in February, but what and it's a function of COVID and staff and the usual stuff. But we need to remember that, and this consultation needs to have it at front and centre, is that the money for any of these works is some years off. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sandra. Anybody else got anything? Can somebody move something for me that we received the memo? Oh, I'll move that we receive it. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Sandra. Anybody got anything else I'd like to add? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Or raise your hand. Those against? That's carried. Chairperson's report, I'll take that as read. Any questions around that? No. I will move that report is accepted, is received. Do I have a seconder for that? Thanks, John. Anybody got anything to add? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand. Those against, that's carried. Matters for information are listed there. Anybody got any questions around those? No. I will move that we receive those. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Andrew. Anybody got anything they'd like to say to that? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand. Those against, that's carried. Right, we have a public excluded report. Did everybody receive that? Yeah. Now, do I have to go to public excluded to pass this to you? No, that's good. Right, I'd like to move that the recommendation that we receive the report and that it remain public excluded. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Andrew. Anybody got anything to say? Right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour raise your hand or say aye. Those against, that's carried. Right, members' information exchange. What is the time? We're at 8:15. Anybody need a quick break? Or are you okay to just finish this off? We'll keep moving then. All right, Andrea. Members' information exchange, anything you'd like to share with us?
Only thing is I've resigned from North Canterbury Neighbourhood Support as the chair. Yeah. So that will be handed over to someone else, but I won't go into it tonight, but there's a reason for me resigning from it. And so disappointingly, that's where I'm at with that there as well. So thank you though.
Well, thanks, Andrea. John. Have you got anything you'd like to tell us you've been up to? John, you're on mute. You got it, John?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Everything I've attended this month has been on, first one was with the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw, and it was on a platform I've never come across before, and it was some Microsoft something. Anyway, we kept on getting interruptions on the call. And you know what was happening? It was my hearing aids were upsetting the balance. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, I've had a meeting with the Woodend Community Association on Zoom. I've had the Northern Drainage Board, or the drainage thing I belong to, on Zoom. And now I've had the Woodend-Sefton Community Board on Zoom. So I'm feeling pretty zoomed out. Okay. That's
Thanks, John. Philip.
I've been a wee bit preoccupied with other things, so I don't have a written report. I can say creative communities are currently considering applications. We've had 22 applications for art type grants, and the committee will be assessing those later this week. So that's a good number compared with the previous round when we had about 6. So I've been busy doing other things, but didn't get to recall it all. So that's it from me.
Thanks, Philip.
I did have cake at Ronell's, I'll declare that.
You did. Andrew? No. So was there anything out of that Pegasus Bay bylaw meeting?
Yes, there was. The most significant, interesting thing was some engagement with the Ministry of Fisheries, effectively, regarding their clams and shellfish on the beach. So the Ministry of Fisheries is going through a process to look at quota and what's and such like, and part of that is to decide what's actually out there. So it's a good thing for us to do as a group to be involved in that and get some facts together, so we know where we stand in considering some of the matters along the beach there. So so that engagement has happened. It's coincides with their process and blah blah, all that sort of thing. So that's good. I think that was a very good and very timely thing to come from it. The review is happening sometime. I can't remember the exact date, but it will happen this year because it was delayed from last year, and I can't recall anything else significant from that. I was there, obviously.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Sandra, have you got anything to add?
Three things. The zone committee allocated its $50,000 annual grant, and there are 3 projects that are within this area. There's Inanga spawning enhancement in the Taranaki stream, and I think that's underway. It's got even more funding. There's a Stony Creek, Saltwater Creek catchment group that has got some money to that's mainly farmer focused, but it would probably be a good idea if someone local put their hand up to at least have a watching brief on it. Carolyn Lathan has, as a zone committee member, is sort of well the instigator of the group. The other thing is the Pines wetland in Tuhatara Park got a hunk of money for willow removal. The second thing, the Alpine River section of the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan, which is the section yet still to be reviewed by Environment Canterbury, and concerns the minimum flow in the Waimakariri River. And as a result of that, the saltwater intrusion up the Kaiapoi River, that is not going to go ahead because ECAN is now fully involved with updating the entire Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan to get a notification out in 2024. I'm a bit concerned, and I was going to ask Simon Markham how as a council get involved in this, because we would have been ideally submitting on that chapter, which is now not going to be reviewed, but married into the whole big exercise that they're trying to get out. So I can ask Simon that. And the third thing is the Ashley Rangiora reach of replanting. That fits into the whole Braided River revival of the Ashley that ECAN's underway with. Unfortunately, they seem to be doing it on a bit of a piecemeal basis, and I don't know whether any of you were involved in the April 7th ECAN consultation on the Rangiora reach. That came about because they, without notification of anybody, felled all those trees and got everybody up everybody's nose. But so they're consulting on that reach restoration. But the zone committee's quite concerned that the overall picture of how that fits into the Braided River revival isn't quite clear. But I'm hoping that some of you were involved in that Rangiora reach because it's in our patch, I think. Yep. So that's me.
Mark.
No, I don't really have anything. Did you get that list through of those street names from John Harris? I didn't get any feedback there.
No, I'll talk about that later, I think, Mark.
All right.
Anything else?
No, not really.
Simon.
Sandra, I think that review has been outstanding for a very long period of time, hasn't it? For the outline.
Oh yes, it was the last chapter to be reviewed after PC7, and of course we were interested in well, when I say we, the Kaiapoi councillors were interested because it has material significance for the Kaiapoi River. But they told us it was a separate section and it was the last chapter to be reviewed. But now it's going to become married in with the whole.
Okay.
So we're still really concerned about how do we get our input into that particular section or issue.
Sure. Look, I'll not take more time tonight. Maybe we can take this offline.
No, that'd be good.
But happy to follow it up because
thank you.
Just what's the basis of the review and how much longer, if you like.
Well, I don't think they're doing it. I think it just comes into the whole lot.
The issue ultimately, in terms of flow regime, still needs to get addressed. So,
so what's the process?
Yeah, got it.
Thank
okay,
you.
I'll follow that up.
Thanks, Simon. Anything else, Simon?
No, sorry, that's me. Hands down.
Right, current consultation projects. We have migrant experiences. Probably also worthwhile if you're involved with any groups, just telling them about the walking and cycling network plan, that the delay, but it is coming, and to start thinking about it and to get their feedback in when it does. We've spent some money for a discretionary grant tonight, so that's good. It's dropped the balance a little bit. Our general landscaping fund is fully committed for this year, and that's actually something the board could consider for next year, is perhaps putting some money towards some planting if the hedge is removed at Cuckoo Beach, and we could put some money from our funding grant towards that in the next year. That's something. Anything anybody would particularly like me to focus on in the media, or just a roundup from tonight?
Just the funding, sweetie.
Yep, will do. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Right, don't we haven't got any?
Actually, and trying to probably recognising that we have recognising the issues that have been raised in the community for Cuckoo Beach with the hedging, and also with Woodend with the playground and stuff like that. Probably just recognising that, not giving them answers, but just recognising that is actually tabled. And we're actually communicating over that. So that would be quite constructive.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, we don't have any questions understanding orders. We don't have any urgent general business understanding orders. Our next meeting is on the 9th of May, which is probably also likely to be Zoom by the sound of it. So officially, I would like to close the meeting. And